Hi everyone, this week I dropped a couple of videos on social media showing the progress I've been making using an AI to generate some pretty crazy, awesome sounding bass sounds. So I just wanted to put together a quick video showing a rough overview of the whole process. I'll do a much more detailed how-to video later, and to show you the kind of results I've been getting and how I'm using this now in my workflow. So let's start by listening to some of the sounds. And these are just raw audio clips that have kind of been spat out by the AI model. So really like interesting different textures. It definitely has a particular neurofunk kind of sound, which it kind of lends itself well to. I don't know if I was training it on other stuff, it would kind of make a different sound, but for this it works really well. Particularly if you want to like just check how it sounds when you slap some drums in it. It's easy to see how you can kind of get inspired by this. So I've really not done any processing on these. I've just maybe quantized them a little bit so that they're kind of a little bit tighter because they can be quite messy. So yeah, let's have a look at how it's done. So the first thing you need to do is to go ahead and get a data set. So what I did was I just meticulously sampled all of the presets that I've built up over the years. If you've been to my site at dcbreaks.com, you'll know there's loads and loads of preset packs on there for things like phase, plant and serum. So I've just gone through my whole library and bounced off all the kind of bass sounds that I've got in there. So things like this. So once you've done that, you need to whack those all into a drive on Google Drive, a folder on Google Drive. The clips need to be between 1 and 4 seconds long. If it's longer than that, the model might struggle to process it and it might crash. So you need to kind of keep it quite short, but as you heard, it will make quite sort of longer samples as well as sort of shorter hits. And you probably want to get them to be reasonably cohesive in terms of the sounds that you're using. If you want to get like a particular vibe at the output stage, if you put in like loads of random different sounds, it might be quite messy, or even more kind of random, or you just want to make it so you get something kind of usable. So I've kind of stuck to that sort of dark bass vibe, and that seems to be working pretty well. And then you need to use this thing. So this is a Google Collab notebook. It's an open source piece of software from the guys at harmoni.org. As you can see in this top section here, it's copyrighted by Zach Evans, who I just connected with on Twitter. Shout out to Zach for making this, and it's free for anyone to use. Okay. Now what this is now, if you're not like from a coding background like me, if you're just a producer, you might find all this a little bit like, what is going on? But it's actually quite straightforward. This Collab notebook basically sits online and it connects you to a GPU, and the GPU is just a processor. In this case, it's a Tesla T4, and it just does all the processing out in the cloud and then gives you back the results. Okay, so your computer's not doing any of the processing. And all this Collab notebook does is it's a bunch of different boxes of code that someone's made that you just need to tweak a little bit for whatever it is you're trying to do, and then execute for this to work. So box 1 is just the description. Box 2 is setup. Within setup, there's 2 bits you need to do. There's 3 bits you need to do. You need to connect to a GPU. So you just literally click this little arrow here. That runs this cell. It connects you. So I'm currently connected. It's actually running right now, so I'm not going to actually do it. The next thing is you need to connect it to your Google Drive. You're going to need a lot of storage. So you're probably going to need to upgrade if you've just got a basic account. So there is a little bit of cost to this. And then the next one you do is to install the dependency. So this is literally just like the sample generator, the bit that actually does the creation of the audio. And then once that's set up, you can then go on to the training section. You can see mine's actually running right now, it's training. And there's just 2 parts to this. The first one is to connect this to something called weights and biases. And I'll show you what that is in a minute, but essentially it's just a dashboard where you can see and hear what it's producing. So it's just a way of monitoring it. You can set up an account for free there as well. And if you just follow these instructions, it will connect this Collab training notebook to that, so it can track everything you're doing. The only slightly complicated bit, and it's really not complicated, is to just set up all the file directory paths of everything you're doing. So you want to give your project a name. This one's called DD Dance Diffusion DC Bass Fine Tune, because what we're doing is we're taking the existing model and we're gradually replacing it with our own sound. So we're fine tuning that model to how we want it. Okay. The next is the path to the directory of the audio data to use for fine tuning. So this is just pointing to my directory called DC Bass. So I just navigate through Google Drive. So Drive, My Drive. I've got a folder called AI Audio Bass. Here's a folder. I can right click, copy the path, and then paste it into here. The next is just telling it where the checkpoint is that we want to fine tune. So when you first start this process, you can just use one of the models from Harmonize. So there's a bunch of different kind of open source models. It doesn't really matter what you're going to be using, because what it's going to do is it's going to take an existing model. In this case, this one here is just like a bunch of live recordings of someone playing in a band. It doesn't matter, because it's going to take that raw audio and then it's going to take your sounds and start swapping them out with the original model until you get something that sounds just like the sounds that you've put into it. So you can download that into your Google Drive and have that there, but then you're then going to start creating your own output. So you just create an output directory for the models. So that's for me is in models, Dance Diffusion, Fine Tune. I've got a bunch of different ones. So just go to DC Bass, that's this one. And then once again, you can just copy that path and it's going to start putting the models in there. So you can see I've got some of these checkpoints here. Okay, don't worry about too much about this at the moment. It's just a quick guide. The rest of the stuff you don't need to fiddle with. You can if you want, but honestly, I haven't. You don't really need to get into all that. And then when you're ready, you just hit go, and what it will then do is start spitting out all this, whatever it is. You don't really need to know what it is, but you can just see it's tracking the progress here. So every 250 steps, so it's going to kind of do some processing. That's a step. Every 250 of those is going to create a checkpoint for us, so we don't lose any work. And then that is going to be dumped over into our weights and biases dashboard. So again, you're probably going, what's all this? But simply all you really need to know is that there's a media section for every run that you do. So when you do some training, it's called a run. And then within each run, it's going to create like audio for each of those 250 steps. So at step 604,501, this is what it produced as a demo. Okay, don't need to listen to all of those, and then you can just download that, and that's how I've been getting my audio clips. There is another Google Collab notebook where you can kind of get it to generate random samples and stuff like that, but I've just been using this demo audio, which it is spitting out at 48 kilohertz, 24-bit. So that's it really. And then once I've got my audio, I'm kind of going through it, chopping it up, finding the good ones, filtering out kind of some of the less good ones, and trying out some of these loops within Live. I've also been kind of starting to build up some folders. I've got some more ones of like stabs, this kind of thing. Some more kind of subby ones. There's some really good sort of random drum hits that you kind of get out of this. Like, some of these would be really good to layer with other drum hits. I've put all the screechier ones into this kind of leads folder. So they would be more like something I'd aim to like resample and kind of create sampler instruments with. There's these kind of wahs and womps. All sorts of stuff, and then these kind of more glitchy ones. So I'm going to use these more like ear candy, just kind of dropping in little samples here and there to kind of make things more interesting. But yeah, most of the actions in these phrases that I've been creating. So these are the kind of the longer files. You can kind of, I guess, browse by file size to get these ones out. And there you have it. So as I said, I'll drop a more in-depth guide as to how to use this a bit later on. There's also some great videos if you search for Dance Diffusion, and also you should definitely join the harmonize.org Discord server for this. There's loads of great and helpful people in there as well. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and as you can hear, I'm getting some really good sounds out of this, so it may well find its way into a sample pack on my website soon as well. So watch this space. Okay, until the next time, I'm out here. Peace out.